Let's play a game of word association. The four in hand, the shell, and the half Windsor.
I got it. Knots, baby.
Yes, as in ties, which are all the rage in MLS this season. Luckily, ET isn't all knotted up. Welcome to Extra Time, everybody. I'm back in the hot seat. Greg Lawless, your host, alongside Shep messing as always. Jason, the producer, has gone back to the other side of the glass. And Shep, I have to ask you, is Jason Brazilian? I mean, he only went with one name when he was here.
Jacinho, but Greg, it's good to have you back.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Well, Act 1 of this week's Extra Time, kissing your sister. As the cliche goes, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing, except this year in MLS, where teams seem to think that the tie is the must-have accessory of the season. A little later on in this segment, we'll be joined by stats guru Peter Hirdt of Elias Sports Bureau to look at the numbers behind all of these draws, but we'll start with New York's unlikely comeback against Houston. I mean, the Red Bulls practically gored themselves. First, they lost Carlos Johnson to that injury, and then Rojas with the red card.
Well, for Rojas, terrible mistake in the first half. Definitely deserved the red card. Mental mistake as well to do that. But Big John Conway, he kept Red Bull in the game. Couple of great saves.
Yeah, the early red card, they needed something from him. But eventually, he gave one up. In the 70th minute, Houston got a goal from Chris Wondolowski. And after that, it seemed like that was going to be the end of the game until a wondrous goal from John Wolyniec in the 88th minute gave New York a share of the points. With this late equalizer, is this a New York team that's beginning to believe in itself?
Well, Greg, I think they are, and I'd make the case that I think they have the best array of foreign talent in the league. And the guy I really think makes a difference, Saladas, played for Barcelona, played for Real Madrid. He's getting assimilated into the team. I think they really need him in that role.
Well, the defense, you always talk about the defense and how they need someone in front of it like a Jesse Marsh or a Pablo Mastroeni, Shauri Joseph, and Saladas seems to be filling in very nicely for them. Out in Los Angeles, Chivas jumped out to a well-deserved 2-0 lead over DC, and then they turned on the cruise control and put their feet up, and they figured that was it. However, DC had a different idea, and first they got a great goal, right? From Emilio comes in with a nice goal, and then in the 85th minute, Santino Quaranta with a shot that personally I think maybe should have been saved, but you and I disagree on that one.
Yeah, we debated that a little bit. I don't think so, because on that goal, Zach Thornton is looking. He sees Christian Gomez. I think Christian Gomez was onside. He swings and misses, but Zach Thornton was playing for Gomez to get a piece of that.
Do you think, though, that keepers should be worrying that Gomez is the defender's responsibility, not Thornton's? He's got to worry about the shot.
It's a little of both. It's educated guessing for a goalkeeper, and the way Christian Gomez was, Zach Thornton had to think he was going to make contact.
Well, Chivas gives up a 2-0 lead at home. We've seen this before. Chicago did it earlier in the season. I mean, why can't a team at home kill off a game? In 75th minute, you've got a lead. Or at home, it's got to be over by then, right?
I agree, Greg. Look, that game, you have to give DC United a lot of credit. They played extremely well. But teams in general, when you have a lead, especially at home, it's your big player, whether it's a Scalotto or a Blanco or somebody who can dictate the pace of the game and keep possession.
Well, one of Chivas' big players actually got on the board for the first time this season. Michael Galindo had his first goal. The Cuban cigar seems back, and he's all lit up. The next day, Chivas' roommates at the Home Depot Center, the Galaxy, got their usual 1 point at home thanks to a stoppage time screamer from Eddie Lewis. Now, I don't know what it is about LA, but they can't seem to get going until they're losing.
Well, I'm giving the LA Galaxy a lot of credit, and Donovan Ricketts in particular. He kept them in that game again in the first half. Berhalter has really organized the defense. You talk about Gonzalez and Berhalter in the central part of the defense, Ricketts in goal. They're going to be in every game.
Well, I'd just like to see them at some point actually take a lead.
That'd be nice.
LA has now gone undefeated in 7 straight games, which is incredibly impressive until you learn that 6 of those have been draws. Well, 2 other teams in MLS have 6 draws each, Chicago and DC United. And this week we got a question from Sean in Owensboro, Kentucky about what's causing all of these ties. So we thought we would bring Peter Hirdt in from the Elias Sports Bureau to help us out. Thank you very much for joining us today. Greg. So we'll start off with, what have you got for us that explains a little bit of all these ties?
Well, I think first you have to distinguish between the kind of tie where teams sit back and bunker down for the last half hour without trying to make an attempt, and they're happy to go home with a point. And those kinds of ties, which we've seen a lot of recently, where a team is pushing forward trying to overcome a one-goal deficit. And if you look at the ties in MLS this season, more than half, I think it's close to 60%, have been created by a team that scores in the last 5 minutes or the last 10 minutes of a game. So that makes for exciting soccer. You're not talking about the types of games where teams are sitting back. You know, we've had them. You talked about the Galaxy, and the Galaxy played a game 2 weeks ago with Seattle where both teams scored early, and there was one shot on goal for the last 55 minutes.
We've actually forgotten that game. We don't like to talk about that one.
But by and large, we've had some exciting ties. Even in this past weekend, you had late goals on bombs by Quaranta and Lewis, and John Wolyniec shows us his technical side.
Right.
You know, so it's made for exciting soccer.
Well, Peter, I'm not arguing that some of those are not exciting games. Do these things statistically have a tendency to even out? Right now, I think in Major League Soccer, it's about 40% of the games are ending in ties. Does this even out over the year?
Usually it does. Just about every season it seems that either there are a lot of ties, scoring is down, scoring is up, people are watching something. That tends to even out over the course of the season. So I think you'll see this as well, but I think the encouraging part is that the amount of ties that we've had so far is based on good high-scoring soccer instead of teams playing back and playing defensive soccer.
Well, it's also, I think, based on something about the playoffs, and also there are more teams in the league and fewer playoffs positions relatively, let's say. So teams are a little bit more conservative about making sure they get that point as opposed to going down and maybe going for that killer dagger. So, I mean, what do you think is causing all of these ties?
I really think that's the biggest factor. I think for the first time in the history of Major League Soccer, it's not a given that you're going to get into the playoffs with expansion, Seattle coming out of the gate playing well. So coaches, I think, are fighting for every point that they can scratch for, and they're also pretty sophisticated. So they know how to shut down the game, maybe get a point and get out of town.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing exciting ties. I mean, we are going to see some exciting wins, aren't we? I mean, eventually it's going to happen.
You would think so. I mean, you had a good example 2 weeks ago in the 3-3 draw between Toronto and DC, where Pontius scored in the 85th minute. Then Toronto came back and put a goal in, and Mourinho scores on a PK in stoppage time. Teams are not sitting back. They're going for wins, and I think you'll see that happen more and more.
Well, hopefully we'll see that change this weekend. Peter's going to join us for Wednesday's show as well, as we'll talk about some young strikers who don't seem to be pulling their weight right now.